I began my journey with cannabis when I was very young. Well, relatively. In high school, I was full of anxiety. I would worry about everything. I'd worry about what people would think. And that anxiety would weigh on me to the point where I would just become depressed. And I wouldn't want to move out of the fear of what people would think. One of the first things I found about cannabis was that it removed my worries. It removed my fears. I cared for people, and I loved the people around me, but I didn't care about what they thought about me. I just wanted to live my best life. I'm starting this adventure launching a cannabis podcast because I am amazed at this plant. But who am I? I'm not a doctor. I'm not a cultivator. I don't even smoke weed. So who am I to start a cannabis podcast? My first experience with the plant was in high school. I didn't become a regular smoker until I was out of high school, and I used cannabis to help me with my anxiety and depression issues. I have bad anxieties. I have trouble going into a Target or a Walmart or a Meijer and not start shaking and sweating out of fear of what I don't even really understand. That people will see me, that people will judge me, that people will make assumptions about me that aren't true. I don't know. But the anxiety is real. And out of high school, I had seen doctors about it, and they'd put me on medications such as Paxil and Zoloft and a host of others that I just hated, to be honest with you. I just hated those prescriptions, and I found life a lot more enjoyable to live if I just self-medicate with cannabis. In that time, I found myself in some potential legal problems, and I found Jesus. And I decided that though I still really loved this plant, I wanted to live in accordance with the law. I wanted to be as good of a witness for Jesus as I possibly could. So I chose to quit smoking. And in that time, I lived in this almost denial about the realities of my situation, of my condition, of anxiety and depression. However, despite my newfound spirituality and attempts to live in submission to more religious points of view about the world, I never changed my mind in the belief that cannabis is a beneficial plant. So in the last 15 years, I've only had one experience, and it was not enjoyable at all. Whatever I smoked, it was too high in THC, and it made my heart feel like it was pounding out of my chest and gave me anxiety worse than I'd ever experienced. And so I haven't touched the stuff, to be honest with you. Flash forward a couple of years, I ended up having surgery on my neck. Herniated disc that left me with shooting pain down my arm and numbness in my hand that lasted for a good year. After surgery, the pain in the arm and the numbness went away, but the pain in the neck remains. The doctor said I have advanced degenerative disc disease for my age. Degenerative disc disease is not uncommon for most people who experience aging. The advanced part is unfortunate, and it has left me with chronic pain in my spine and very frequent bulging or herniated discs in my neck all the way down to my lumbar. So with surgery comes opiates, and with opiates comes addiction. They just go hand in hand, and I'll tell you why, because opiates are amazing. They do some really crazy fun stuff with your head. After surgery, I was prescribed Percocet, and it was great. Love the stuff. When I took Percocet, I mean, besides the fact that it made my stomach hurt, made me nauseous, and I had to take anti-nausea pills as well, it made me feel so much love for everybody in the room. I didn't think I could love my kids more. Then I had some Percocet and I was like, I love you so much more. And it's really not good. I'll just be honest with you. The addictive qualities just in that feeling right there is dangerous. There's no other word for it. It's dangerous. People have succumbed to that addiction and that feeling and that craving for that feeling to return to the point of death, to the point of not being able to get Percocet, so they go to heroin. God forbid fentanyl. Not that heroin's better. But this isn't really about addiction. This is about cannabis. So I'm a guy in pain. I live with pain and I get through life with pain. I'm allergic to NSAIDs, so I don't just get to pop a couple Advil or Aleve and go about my day. Not that I really should do that anyway, because it's not very good for your kidneys and liver as well. I have 2 amazing children. My son is autistic and my daughter is typically developing, or neurotypical, or whatever the term is these days. And I love my son, and I'd do absolutely anything for him. And he had a lot of trouble in places like the grocery store or going to an amusement park or just the park. Any place that there was a large crowd of people or open spaces, he just would either get really anxious and want us to hold him, or he would run and we would be chasing him down. So to counteract that, we decided that we were going to get a service dog for him, a dog that we could tether him to, that would bond with him and give him feelings of security no matter what environment he was in. And as weird as it was to me to tether my son to a large dog, he loves it. We go to a place and he comes up and wants that belt around his waist and he wants to be attached to his dog and he wants to go for a walk. And it gives him a lot of comfort and I love that for him. For me, the guy with anxiety who has a hard time walking into a store without getting the sweats and the shakes, it becomes almost unbearable because now it's not just the perception that people are looking at me and judging me. People actually are looking at us and judging us, which is so much worse for someone like me. I don't know. Maybe not someone like me. Maybe that's not fair. But for me, it was so much worse. And so pain, anxiety, depression, it was a lot. I was working for a church, and it was like the 3rd church I was working for that decided it was going to close. And I knew it was going to close before they made that decision. And I got depressed. I got seriously depressed. I got depressed to the point where I handed over and sold my firearms to family members because I had too many bad thoughts, too much pain, and just wishing the pain would stop. And so I handed over my guns and I went to see my doctor, who started me again on more prescription drugs, started me on Prozac, and the name of the other one was slipping my mind. But when that one didn't work out so well, they moved me to Abilify, and Abilify made me psychotic. I had an actual episode of not being able to tell reality from whatever was going on in my mind. I'd see my wife get up out of bed and walk out of the room into the kitchen, but in reality, she was in the bathroom the whole time. I'd see my kids walking down the stairs, and they were really not upstairs in their rooms to begin with. They've been playing in the basement the whole time. That was crazy. That was really hard. But luckily, I, again, recognized that I was having a problem and went back to my doctor, and they put me on lithium. Lithium, if you've ever been on it, is hard. It crushes your emotions. And your emotions are such a big part of you that, yeah, I feel like it crushed me. I remember playing with my kids, and they would come up to me and smile and want to play and show me some dance or some thing that they're making up in their creative world. And I felt virtually no emotion. I was thinking to myself, I should feel such joy right now, but all I felt was flat. I felt love in my heart, but not in my spirit. It was no way to live. One of the things we did during this time was have my wife's sister and parents and her sister's husband move in with us. They moved from California to here in Ohio, and they needed a place to stay for a little while they got settled. So it was really hard, but it was really good. It was good for me to have those loving people around me during my time of just wanting it all to stop. It helped me see that there were people in my life that liked having me around, and that was worth fighting for. And during that time, we decided to start a podcast. It's Kingdom Conversations Quadcast, because there's 4 of us, me, my wife, her sister Ann, and Ann's husband Sean. And it was good. Had a lot of fun doing it and got really excited about it. I never really thought of myself as a podcast type of person, but really enjoyed doing it and the conversations that we were having, the different views on theology and life and social issues, political issues, all that good stuff. It's fun to talk about, and it's fun to talk about, to disagree and still love each other. It's good. We wanted to grow. We wanted to know what we were doing because we were just faking it. Sometimes I feel like we still are, but we sent me to a podcast convention, Podcast Movement 2018 in Philadelphia. And that's where I met a lady by the name of Joanna Nutting. And I just started talking to her about her podcast, which was about cannabis. It's called Casually Baked, and I highly recommend you check it out if you're looking for more cannabis content to listen to. And it was just a great conversation I had. I just opened up to her about all the stuff that I'd gone through with depression, anxiety, and pain, all the different medications I was on, the fact that I couldn't take a simple NSAID. And she had a lot of compassion for me and shared with me what just CBD could do for me. And I'll be honest, I was skeptical. I was very skeptical. I'm like, these doctors have got these heavy hitting drugs, and I still find myself going ups and downs, and they're not as bad as they were, but it's still just no way to live. I was really skeptical about it, but I couldn't live on lithium anymore. I just knew I needed to get off of it. I felt like my body was being poisoned. I felt just shakes in my legs and twitches in my body that I was just like, this is not good. So I quit lithium at a very rapid, wasn't cold turkey. I cut down my milligrams per day. Probably not the way my doctor would have wanted me to do it, but I knew I needed to get off. And I replaced it with CBD tincture and CBD vape. And I got to tell you, I felt amazing. I did not feel any anxiety going to my kids' school or to the store or visiting with my wife's friends. It was really good. And I decided that I wanted to try this without Prozac as well. So I weaned myself off of Prozac, and I'm just using CBD right now. And I have to tell you that for me, it's working phenomenally well. Now, I can't say everybody's going to have that same experience. And if you're on medications, I would highly recommend you talking to your doctor about you wanting to get yourself off of them and not just do what I did, because I don't know, I just cannot recommend enough working with your physicians, talking to them about wanting to treat yourself with cannabis, with CBD, and possibly, if you qualify, getting your medical recommendation, which is necessary here in the state of Ohio. Perhaps you're listening from another state and that isn't a concern for you. So here I am, a guy who grew up liking cannabis, seeing that it's a beneficial plant all my life, but then going back to it as an adult and seeing that, oh, this is not what I remember. This is a bad experience. I need to lay off of it. And then talking to a lady who filled me with so much information and let me know, hey, that bad experience was because you overdid it. You were drinking all day at this family reunion of yours. And then you decided to, hey, let's go back to the cannabis. And it was not a good choice. She talked to me about mindfulness and she talked to me about microdosing, and it all seemed to make sense, especially when I take into consideration the fact that CBD had such a positive influence in my life and in my mental well-being, that I thought to myself, you know what? I think I need to explore this further, and I need to not let that bad experience rob me of potentially being able to treat my chronic pain. So I did a little bit of research and found a doctor who is allowed by the state of Ohio to recommend medical marijuana. And I talked to him. I got my medical records from my primary care physician and I sent them to his office and sat down and talked to him. And we discussed my spine issues. You know, I'll be honest with you. When I went into this, I was like, man, this is just going to be some medical marijuana card factory where they're just going to put me in, take my money, and give me a letter of recommendation and send me on my way. But this guy sat down with me and talked to me about my past surgery. He talked to me about my current experiences with my back and physical therapy type stretches that I'm still working on and the other treatments that I'm working with. And he gave me a recommendation of marijuana, but not just a recommendation of marijuana. He also gave me treatment plan. He discussed with me ways I can use THC and CBD to treat my pains, what time of day to treat my pains, and which medicines to take at certain times of day. And I was honestly amazed at the professionalism and the consideration about my specific needs and my specific condition and the knowledge of the research that has been done considering my condition. And I was blown away. I got my recommendation about a week and a half before the dispensaries in Ohio were supposed to be open on September 8th of 2018. And then that got pushed back. I've heard rumblings from people that say that it won't be fully operational until Easter. And that just started making me think about all the people who could really benefit from this plant, even more than me. The people who are suffering from opiate addiction and are wanting to get off of it, but cannot use non-lethal, naturally growing plants such as marijuana to help them break that cycle. I started thinking about the people who are suffering from MS who could really benefit from this plant. I started thinking about the seizure kids. If you have not seen what cannabis can do for kids with seizure conditions, you really should do some research. Just Google it. It's amazing. And the fact that we can't get it yet is heartbreaking. And that is what really inspired me to do this podcast. I'm inspired by the stories of the patients who have been so patient in waiting for the ability to treat their afflictions with this natural product. A product that's shown to be safe, a product that, unlike opiates, does not affect the part of your brain that responds to breathing. So that if you take too much of it, you will not stop breathing. You might fall asleep and have a good nap, but you will not die. I'm so inspired by the stories of the people who've come to understand how beneficial this plant can be for them and how it can help them live the best life possible. Because let's be honest, life is short, and we all deserve the chance to live our best life. Now, my best life might look different than your best life, but I believe that we all have a God-given right to explore those options for ourselves. I am a Christian. I have been in vocational ministry for 10 years, and I am pro-cannabis. I want to do this podcast because I believe that it is beneficial. I believe it is beneficial for overall wellness. And I believe it is beneficial just to help people love on each other a little more. I would like to use this podcast as not just a way for people to share their stories, but also a way for people to get information and to make their own decisions, to come to their own conclusions, to set aside for a moment stereotypes and stigmas surrounding cannabis and think about it with a fresh eye and an open mind and consider it. So join me and we'll consider cannabis together.